Okay, I'd like to call this meeting's order to Farmington County Board of Appeals. The speaker, please stand for the pledge of allegiance.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to start off with the introduction of zoning board of appeals members. Tom White, Bill Dennis, Bill Kaplan, and Maryland's County Way. Yeah, the ever so popular Sarah Mission. John Rand, Director of Development, John Warner, Board Officer. Review merge exits. You got the one that we came in. There's one in the back. To my left. You got right. Okay. This meeting will be conducted according to the rules and procedures of the zoning board of appeals adopted on February 27th, 2023. I have I assume that all board members have seen the February minutes. Can I get a motion to accept them?
Motion to approve. I'll second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
We're attending to the public legal notice. There was one legal notice published on March 19, 2023, tonight's agenda, TV 0321-23, Fowler Family Trust. Tonight's public hearing. Deliberations by the zoning board of appeals will be continued to the April 24th, 2023 meeting to provide for the Ontario County Planning Board to review on the referral made from the provisions of the New York State General Municipal Law, sections 239-I and -M. County Planning Board will meet on this referral and for April meeting held on Wednesday, April 12th, 2023. 19 at 7 p.m. We're meeting open to the public. Please go to the county planning board website for the meeting time and location. Two draft resolutions were prepared, distributed to the board, the applicant's attorney, and then posted on the town's website in accordance with the zoning board of appeals rules and procedure prior to tonight's public meeting. With that said, open tonight's public hearing. And ask for the presentation by the applicant or the applicant. All right. So,
thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Daniel Brennan. I'm from the law firm Davidson Bank, and I'm here on behalf of the applicant tonight, Fowler Family Trust. Together with me is Chris Kamar, the engineer from ADP, as well as Mr. Fowler, who is the trustee for the applicant. I trust that everybody got a copy of our submission and attached exhibits. Mr. Kambar has also prepared a blow up of the subdivision and concept drawings. And we have some additional copies in 11/17 if any members of the public would like to take a look. We have extra copies. So I'm just going to give a brief overview and then Mr. Kambar is going to discuss the plan with you. We're seeking area variance relief today. The plan is to subdivide an existing 2 lots into 3 lots. Basically, what we're seeking is a reduction in the minimum lot size. We're seeking to create a flag lot on this property, or 3 flag lots on this property, which is, while not necessarily expressly allowed under the code, is something that is certainly contemplated under the code. There's a definition of flag lot, which we've described in our papers. The lots that we're proposing comply or conform generally with that definition of flag lot. But at the town's direction, we're seeking variance relief to allow this project to move forward to subdivision approval. In addition to the plans that we've provided, we've gone through the area variance standards, which after Mr. Ambar is done describing the map for you, I'll go through in a little more detail. But the area variance standards are in my letter, as well as some of the proof that we've provided to the board in the form of some research that we've done on the existing other flag lots in the town of Farmington that were either approved or currently exist in residential districts, in agricultural districts, and nearby to this property. And we'll explain how that meets the standards that this board will need to consider for the area variance relief. But with that, I think I'll turn it over to Chris.
Good evening. As David said, I'm Chris Cambar with APD Engineering and Architecture. 615 Fisher's Run, Victor, New York, 145. 6th floor. Move this forward. Currently, there's 2 lots. This is kind of split down the middle. This area is the property in question, and it's 12 plus acres. So it is a rather large piece of property. And what Mr. Fowler would like to do is subdivide the property up into 3 lots rather than 2. And what we put on here for visualization purposes only is the potential housing structures that could go into these 3 lots. And the reason we showed that visualization, we felt it was necessary to show the board that it is possible to put 3 houses on this lot and still have plenty of room, and the lots would still be rather large. The smallest lot is just over 2 acres, and that's the one in the center. Essentially, there's 300 foot of frontage, and we're breaking that up into 2 lots with 125 foot of frontage, and 1 lot with 30 foot of frontage to allow a driveway back to this 3rd lot here. We've received survey, so we're comfortable with the location of the houses, the location of the steep slope. We do have mapped out some floodplain down below, as well as the creek. The structures that are on the property do meet the setback 50 foot on the 15 side, as well as any rear setback. And I'll let David speak to as far as what we're actually asking to read for. And we'll save questions. Thank you.
Before I get into the variance standards, I just wanted to provide some additional information for the board. I have copies of some letters of support. Each of these are identical packets. So I'll just give a copy to each of the board members as well as the clerk and staff. These are letters of support that we've received from some of the neighbors. Mr. Fowler provided his neighbors with a copy of our proposed subdivision map and asked for their opinions. We have some of those opinions in these letters that we think should be considered by the board. Certainly, the opinions of the neighbors are not as positive on this issue. We're asking for an area variance from the minimum lot width. And while we'll get through all of the individual legal standards, what the courts have held, the general overall test for an area variance is whether the benefit to the applicant outweighs any possible harm or detriment to the nearby neighbors or to the neighborhood in general. And in looking at the letters of support that we've received from neighbors, I think that it is clear that there will be no harm to the nearby neighbors. This proposed subdivision is in keeping with the existing character of the area. The proposed lot width, while it is technically under the definition of the code, which is that the minimum lot width essentially has to be measured along both of the side lot lines, the entire length of the property. While we don't technically comply with that definition, most of the property is going to be wider than what is required under the minimum. It will be wider than what is required under the code. That is because of that fact. There is no detriment to the nearby neighbors or to the neighborhood itself. Furthermore, another thing to consider is the fact that there are already existing flag lots in the neighborhood and in the town of Farmington in general. In doing a little bit of background research, and I will admit that this is fairly rudimentary. We obtained copies of the tax maps for the town. We were able to identify at least 27 flag lots in the town that appear to meet the definition of flag lot under the code. We've provided a list of those lots that we've identified as flag lots and attached them as Exhibit E. As you'll see from Exhibit E, many of the lots that we identified as flag lots are in the RS 25 district and in the R 115 residential district, and others are in the residential and agricultural districts. So they're not in commercial districts, they're not in industrial districts, they're in other residential. The fact that there's already existing flag lots, this many in the town, that including a development that is directly adjacent to the Pheasants Crossing subdivision, proves that there will be no harm to the neighbors or to the neighborhood because it is already in keeping with the existing character of the neighborhood. I think the other thing that this board should consider is again, while the definition of the flag lot under the code is not necessarily dispositive on this issue, and we've been advised by the town that we need to apply for area variance for this proposed subdivision. What we're doing conforms exactly with the definition of a flag lot under the code. And I've quoted the definition of a flag lot on page 2 of my letter, but there are basically 4 standards or components of a flag lot. One, that there be a lot frontage of at least 20 feet for the access area. 2, that the interior portion contains the minimum lot area in the district. 3, the access area cannot be built on, won't be built on. And 4, the access area cannot be used in calculating the minimum lot area or setbacks. We meet all of those. We have the lot frontage of at least 20 feet for the access area. The interior portion of the lots will be larger than the minimum lot size in the district, in fact, substantially larger. The access area will not be built on. The access area will just proposally be solely for access driveway, and that the access area cannot be used in calculating the minimum lot area or setbacks. We will comply with that as well. So we've basically complied with the definition of a flag lot. The only thing that the code asks us to do is that it be an approved subdivision. And so that's why we're here tonight. The lot that is that is the most difficult lot in this proposed subdivision is the parcel B. That's the one that's sandwiched in the middle. That's the one that has the whole area or the narrow access way. That lot, while it is clearly a flag lot, it's not going to cause any harm to the neighbor. It's not going to cause any detriment to the neighborhood. In fact, the house that would be built on that lot, which we're not actually, proposing for approval yet. We're just requesting an approval to allow the subdivision of the land. Any house that's built on parcel B would be set back significant, more than is required by code from the street, and therefore you're not going to have a situation where there's going to be three houses sort of crammed in together closely, where there's going to be narrow setbacks in between the houses that's going to look different from what's already there. You're going to have a single house that's going to be set back significantly from the street, and therefore it won't have any impact on the street or on the aesthetics of the neighborhood. The next legal standard for the board's consideration is whether the benefit sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other method other than the variance. As this board may be aware, prior to my involvement with this project, Mr. Fowler and Mr. Cambar have come to the town with multiple different iterations. We've looked very closely at different ways to configure this property to allow the subdivision into 3 lots, and without seeking area variance relief is just physically not possible, according to the town interpretation of the code. So there is no engineering solution around this. Due to the steep slope and the conditions in the rear portion of the property, it's not buildable back there. There are no feasible engineering solutions to get us around this problem other than the variance. The next factor to be considered is whether the requested area variance is substantial. I would argue that it is not at all substantial. So we actually exceed many of the dimensional requirements under the code for lots in this zoning district. Most importantly, the minimum lot size. We could have significantly more lots with the total lot area that we have. By my calculations, these 2 properties together fit approximately 21 lots of 25,000 square feet each, which is the minimum in the district. We're only proposing 3, and the property is 1,200 feet long at its widest point, which is wide enough under the width requirements for 9 consecutive lots. So while there is a small portion of this lot where we cannot comply with the minimum lot dimensions, for the majority, the larger piece of this property, not only can we comply with the code standards, we can exceed them. And the other consideration is that we comply with the definition, those standards of what constitutes a flag lot under the zoning code definition. The fact that we comply with that makes the request for variance relief insubstantial. Whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood or the district, I would argue there will be no negative environmental impacts. There will be no impacts on the conditions in the neighborhood because this is an existing subdivision. There are existing flag lots in the area. There are existing flag lots in the town, and this is a residential subdivision. So it will not have any adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions. The final factor, which is not dispositive, the board doesn't need to find that the hardship was not self-created, right? You meet that standard anyways. The the problem with this property is that it has this very steep slope and some other engineering concerns on a portion of it. And it's due to the shape of the lot that necessitates this variance. So those factors were not caused by the applicant. So I've gone on for quite a while now. I love to hear myself talk, but I think it would be beneficial to hear some questions or feedback from the board, and we're happy to answer any questions that you have or for members of the public.
Okay. For the record, people, before I go into that, I think this is ZB 0301-23, Our Family Trust, 6176 Country Drive, Farmington, New York. The applicant is requesting area variance to the provisions contained in chapter 165 and attachment 1, schedule 1, of the Farmington Town Code. The applicant wishes to create a third lot that would have a minimum lot width of 30 feet. Town code requires a minimum lots of 125 feet. The proposed lot would be parts of the proposed new subdivision from the lot number R5-A with a tax ID number of 29.13-1-5.102. Lot number R-5-B, the tax ID number of 29.13-1-5.200 of the Pheasant Crossing subdivision. These three proposed lots will be located along the west side of Pheasant Crossing and within the Pheasant Crossing subdivision tract. All lots are zoned RS-25 residential. So that's Sarah, we'll enter that into the public record.
Right.
Maybe. Okay. Staff comments.
I have, as you stated, prepared two resolutions for your consideration. They were sent last week to the members of the board, the applicant and the applicant's attorney. They were also posted on the town's website in accordance with the state's open meeting law and the policies of procedures of the zoning board of appeals. First one is a classification under seeker of the action. The second one is a continuation, which is necessitated by the timing of the submission of the referral package from the applicants and missing the county planning board meeting for the month of March. It is on the agenda for the April meeting on the second Wednesday of the month, the 12th. And I honestly don't remember where they hold their meeting. They used to be at the county office building, but sometimes they've been out on County Road 46. But anyways, I'm here tonight to listen. I have just one question for the engineer. If I heard you correctly, you said there were two lots of 125 feet in width. And then you have this one lot here of 30 feet in width. And
That would be 150 feet each, I believe. It's 300 altogether the frontage.
so you got 330 feet of frontage.
No, the total frontage is 300 feet. From edge of property to edge of property. I was saying there's two lots that are 125 and one that is 30. 135. 135.
Yes, 135, right? That would add up. Sorry.
Yeah, okay, that's what I was asking.
Okay,
What happened to the other 20 feet? But
so there's two 135s and 135.
okay,
So many iterations in fact. I apologize.
that's all I have at this time. You want to call on John?
My turn.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. So we did do some research in the zoning department and the building department. The flag lots that were presented in his presentation all appear to have been created prior to the 2000 flag lot definition that he's quoting. So we're not sure. The flag lot definition starts with unapproved lot. So Dan's interpretation for the code is on there, and Dan is online if you'd like to ask any questions of that interpretation. So it's not necessarily saying you can't create them, but from what we're seeing is that the definition came about. There's been no lots created since that definition came about. So as you see, they are requesting that variance. We provided all that information you guys in your packets, as well as everything that's been sent to us by the applicants and by the community and residents have all been forwarded on to you guys within your applications.
Public comments. Any comments? State your name and address.
No, I'll be along and. My concern is just
Your address.
oh, I'm sorry.
And unfortunately, we also need you to step over there because that's where the mic is. I'm sorry.
You're on TV.
Yeah.
I'm Amy Payne, I live at 6250 Pheasants Crossing, so one of those properties would be my direct neighbor. I'm concerned that the way the house is set in the lot will change the conformity on the street. So right now, if you go down the street, there is, the houses are set in the center of their lots. There's a long space between, where the houses are set to the edges of the lot. I realize that the zoning may allow for houses to be set closer, but my concern is that it changes the conformity of the whole neighborhood. That's it.
State your name and address, please.
My name is Greg Coon. I live at 6250 Pheasants Crossing as well. So actually, I got a couple questions about these flag lots, because currently the law changed in 2005, or it was actually something was developed.
2000 is what I have for it.
And no new flag lots have been added in town.
Not that I could answer.
So how many are in our neighborhood, the Pheasants Crossing neighborhood?
I can answer that question if the board.
That's up to the board. All your questions have to be directed to the board, and if they'd like to ask with the applicant, they
So,
can.
yes, I'm curious how many flag lots have in Pheasants Crossing neighborhood?
I don't believe there's any, but
You can ask the applicant if you'd like to.
is there any
I can just add to that.
into the neighborhood?
I neglected to mention that it's attached to exhibit D is a tax map that shows, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, adjacent, flag lots, just to the north. They're actually, touching or each touching each other and then sharing a boundary line with lot 5.1, of our subdivision. So there are existing flag lots in the neighborhood. In fact, the access drive on those flag lots, as you can see on the tax map, is substantially longer than what we're proposing. Although they do meet that definition under the code that says the access area has to be at least 30 feet wide. So there are existing flag lots in the neighborhood. I can get you a copy of that tax map if you'd like, sir, so you can see what I'm talking about.
With your question.
In Pheasants Crossing, not crossing the street. My neighborhood is Pheasants Crossing.
Well, they're not across the street. They're actually sharing a boundary line in one of the two parcels that's in question, right? So they're not on the Pheasants Crossing street, but they are directly adjacent to the north, sharing a boundary line with the 5.2.
I think I understand that. The other question was there was mention of room for 20-something lots in there somewhere. I'm curious where you put 20 lots in there, since all of that's non-buildable for their statement.
I can probably address that. So what he was referencing was the lot size. For the lot size, he could fit that in there, but he wouldn't have the road frontage, which is why he's here today for his variance. So based on lot size, he could break that up, but he wouldn't meet road frontage, so they'd never be an approved lot without
You
variances.
couldn't build on those lots anyway, are we correct?
I don't know. I'm not an engineer. I can't tell you where you can and can't build.
Yeah, it was just watch. Thank you.
Anybody else? State your name and address, please.
Hello, Louis Francisco, 6256 Franklin Crossing. Just find a clarification, so the center lot, 30 feet, that's the driveway, leading to the rear where the house will be. You know, originally, I believe Mr. Bauer had 19 lots. And he sold 18 to Mr. Lopez. With the idea, my understanding was that he would have a homestead for himself built on the remaining central lot. Suddenly, that remaining lot becomes 3 lots. So, in my opinion, it's much too much for the area. And it seems like it's a financial decision rather than a just decision for the neighborhood. I could see possibly 2 good sized lots there. Again, meeting the zoning qualification, but to make it into 3 lots. Originally it started with 1 big lot. I don't think that would serve the neighborhood well enough.
Anybody else? Yeah, I'll be. These things you know in the address. Pete LeBlanc, 6262 Pheasants Crossing. I have to agree with what some others have said here, like. Behind this. Proposed third lot structure. It's quite a grade here, and I think when we talk about this. All this property, it might as well be a lake essentially, because this is not buildable. You can't put X number of lots here. We're really just talking about this rectangle. And this is a curious thing. I don't know why we're talking about splitting 1 lot into 3 lots. I don't even understand the point of it. That's what others that came today. Like, why can't you just build on the one? Well, it's proposed 2 lots. Okay, well, why can't you build on the other one?
May I clarify for the board, just because I've heard this said a couple times to others. And it's a bit confusing, there are actually already 2 legally existing parcels. And so what we're proposing is essentially to turn 2 lots into 3. It's subdivision and potentially subdivision / recombination. So there are 2 existing legal lots there now, and we're seeking to have a 3rd.
So it was originally 1 that got divided into 2 some time ago, am I correct?
2020.
2020. So like when I guess I can look there.
Sorry.
Yeah. I originally, when I heard about this, I was kind of indifferent, but the more I look at it, it just doesn't seem to fit in with the neighborhood, I guess. It's like you're trying to jam 3 homes where you would put 2 homes, and just the increased traffic. The extra driveway, I just don't see a real reason for it. Like I said, this is all not an area where you would build any homes, so I don't understand. The discussion of how many lots you could fit there, you know. Anyway.
My name is Patrick Dispenza. I live at 6237 Pheasant Crossing, which is directly across the street. I bought the house about 6 years ago. I forget what I was saying. Daniel said that by doing this, it'll bring less value. It won't have any effect on the value of the neighborhood. So I bought my house 6 years ago. When I bought my house, I looked at the neighborhood, I looked at all the cosmetics, how the houses were set, how big the lots were, and that's when I decided to spend the amount of money that I spent on my house. Now, it was 1 lot when I bought my house. It got changed to 2. That's fine, I think that's probably okay by the size of those lots. But you put this across the street from my house, and that's gonna lower the value of my property. We talked to realtors, they've all said, yeah, that doesn't make any sense. You talked about the lots, that are flag lots, that are basically bordered here. Those homes are way off the road, they have their own street, they have wooded lots, they're all big lots. There's nothing like this over here, it's not a equal comparison. The other ones that he mentioned are on County Road 41. They sit back off the road there. You can't tell me that those houses have the same value that my house has, and I'm sure all my neighbors agree with it. So today, it's not going to have an effect on our neighborhood and the value of our house, when some of us are getting older, we're gonna need to sell our houses at some point, let some younger families come in. I really believe that an effect. That being said, I want to make that point.
Hi, my name is Lynn Chu. I live at 6249 Hudson Crossing. My wife Maureen is here with me today. And basically, I'm the last one, so they said all that needs to be said. My concern is the same concern, as far as property value, just the aesthetic of the neighborhood. When we moved in, like everybody said, it was set up for a certain amount of houses, and now all of a sudden it changed. My fear is, you're gonna let one, what to say, you're gonna let something else in that same property, it's gonna have another value on somebody else's property. Right, so that's my main concern. Like all the other concerns, so property value, going down, aesthetic of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Hi, I'm on Zoom. I'm wondering if I would have an opportunity to speak as a neighbor on Pheasant Crossing, or you're not allowed to participate via Zoom?
We'll get to that in the next later on.
We do the ones in the room first,
Okay,
and then we go to those online,
okay, thank you.
ask for their input, so hang in there.
Sure, thank you.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Yeah, go ahead. Yep.
So my name is Maureen Dispenza, and I live at 6237 Pheasants Crossing. I had to write my thoughts down so I could stay organized and save time. So bear with me. I'm gonna turn this in when I'm done. The reason I'm here is to address the Fowler Family Trust variance application and our opposition to this application. Fowlers have come to the town zoning board repeatedly to alter the parcel in Pheasants Crossing. Initially, it was to get approval for one lot to build his home, then decided not to build and attempted to sell the parcel in question without success. Next, he came back to the zoning board in 2020, asking to have the parcel split into 2 lots. Again, the Fowlers attempted to sell both lots without success. Now the Fowlers are attempting to create 3 lots within that same parcel. We object to the approval of this variance request when construction plans have not been submitted for approval. Proposed 3rd lot is very close to the floodplain. We're not convinced where they propose to build would be approved. Seemingly, both housing plans for the lots and the variance request would be submitted together. Based on their indecisiveness of this parcel, it would be both in the town's as well as the development's current homeowner's best interest to ensure the 3 builds will meet the average size, parcel layout, and value consistent within the neighborhood. Furthermore, the requested division of this parcel is extremely inconsistent with the existing lots in the established neighborhood. The additional lot the Fowlers are requesting doesn't meet the requirements of the flag lot, which was determined in July of 2022. Fowlers are attempting to get a variance approval on an unapproved lot. Their application references hardship due to the floodplain within this parcel. There is no hardship, as it will be developed as part of the current development. Any hardship the Fowlers are claiming are self-imposed. There are 2 approved lots. The proposed variance will change the physical appearance of the neighborhood. The 2 approved lots are proposed to be constructed very close to property lines next to existing homes, rather than the center of the property. In addition, the proposed homes would be much closer to the road. Currently, existing homes are center of the property and sit on an average of 78 feet from the road. We're concerned about future property values because what they're proposing is grossly uncharacteristic within the neighborhood. It looks like what it is, squeezing 3 homes into 2 lots. Finally, the Fowler situation is completely self-created. They own the entire development property. Chose to sell all the land to developers except for the lot in question. Due to their lack of forethought, they are in this situation. Examine their histories. They're building one day and selling the next. We have no problem with the Fowlers building their home on one of the two approved lots. Allowing a third lot is just not acceptable to our development homeowners. Please refer to the petition we submitted opposing the variance, as well as a signed letter from one resident. The amount of signatures tells the board the residents in this development do not want this change. And I think if you look at the petition, in fact, I'm certain of it, all but 3 homes signed that petition. One home I did not get a hold of. The other 2 wanted to attend the meeting to hear what this was all about before they were willing to make a decision one way or another. That said, I want to thank you for your time. And I hope you'll make a decision in our favor. We love our homes, we love our neighborhood. Thank you.
We have some online. Please state your name and your address.
Pamela,
Pamela.
Hi, thank you. Pamela Schlurf, 6218 Pheasants Crossing. And I appreciate being invited to this meeting. And as many of my neighbors have mentioned, I do not have any reservations about the Fowlers personally coming to build a home in our neighborhood, and I'm sure we'd welcome them with open arms. However, to follow up with some of the other comments that have been made in reference to dividing the property, my husband and I purchased our home about 7 years ago. And with that, we took a hard look as to where we would want to be. I grew up directly across the street in the Doe Haven subdivision. And at the time growing up, this was Mr. Kai's property, and have watched over the years how this particular development came to be. And as I speak on behalf of my husband, who is employed out of Boston and is not able to be in person, I'm speaking on behalf of both of us, that we strongly feel that dividing that property into 3 separate parcels would be grossly negligent in a way that it does in fact change the landscape of our neighborhood. And as many also have mentioned, our opinions are that the houses are centered on these lots. They are reasonably sized for each of the homeowners there. I do know a couple of our acquaintances that have gone to try to purchase the different properties at the 2 divided and never really got any feedback, and so perhaps the lack of communication on willing to sell those lots could have been that this particular property was already in this zoning variance sort of thought process. So our main concerns again is that having 3 homes on that lot, that parcel, I can't imagine with the wetlands and the way that that is, that you can get 3 houses to look like the neighborhood has been carefully designed and built. The way that I saw the drawings is the driveway would go down through the middle, and they would have a home set more towards the back along the creek line. And then you've got the one property off to the topography map here provided, that I can't imagine you could even build on that sort of sloped triangle to meet the look of, again, the neighborhood. You know, maybe the other one can, but I also worry about the neighbors on, either side. And again, Maureen and Pat Dispenza across the street, who predominantly, right, have the most frontage of these 3 homes, and what this would do to the property values. And again, my husband and I fully support the development of the property, but we do not support it being divided into 3 parcels. I think you're trying to put too much into that space. And, we appreciate being heard. And again, I hope that you'll hear us. And if we could lobby for the 2 lots and not to be divided into a third. Thank you.
Anyone else online would like to speak?
Hi, this is Heather LeBlanc from 6262 Pheasants Crossing. Really just wanted to echo everything people said here today. I bought this house with my husband in 2006 and we were so excited, and really we were 25 miles from work. So it wasn't convenient. But what we loved about it was the fact that these houses were in a community, but they weren't on top of each other. And that's what we loved. And that's why we bought. And that's why we came to Farmington. So the idea now to smush 3 houses into where 1 was planned and now 2 was planned and now 3 are being asked for really just doesn't make sense. And it makes me want to leave. And I don't want to have to feel like I want to leave my home. So I appreciate your consideration and absolutely support 2 homes on this property, but not 3. Thank you.
Anybody else like to speak online?
Yeah, hello, this is Andrew Moyer of 6226. I was there 2.5 years ago during the original request to divide this lot from 1 to 3. There was a lot of questions and it was obviously rejected to the point where it was then subdivided into 2 lots. I don't see why we would further say now 2.5 years later, let's divide it back into 3 lots with the fact that the main concern 2.5 years ago was the floodplain. It just seems like we're in the same exact spot. And that the reason behind this is, again, not for the aesthetics of the neighborhood, but it's more for the financial purpose of building this home. But that being said, thank you for your consideration, and I don't know, thank you.
Okay, is anyone else online?
Mr. Chairman, I just want to clarify that the original plan wasn't rejected by any board of the town. After discussion, the applicant changed his 3-lot to a 2-lot submission from the planning board. So there was no official rejection. It was just when he was presented with that he would need a variance and everything else, he adjusted his application.
Was the original application for the flag lot, or was it for a lot behind some other houses?
Behind-
I can't remember the original layout
Yeah,
off the top of my head.
It was flag lot.
Yeah.
We remember.
It was behind 6226 and 6232.
Any questions from the board members?
So this originally, the subdivision originally got approved back in 1998 according to your letter, correct?
Correct.
And this is one parcel, and then this proposed. What we're questioning tonight, it was 1 lot. Or wasn't that, it wasn't a lot, it was just, it was 1 lot. correct?
My understanding of the sequence is that the Pheasants Crossing subdivision was altogether, this entire neighborhood essentially was approved back in 1998.
Okay,
So prior to that, there was nothing.
Okay. just to make sure I'm being clear. And then 3 years ago, in 2020, it was divided into 2 lots. So I guess what's changed in the last 3 years that are going to be the 3rd lot? That's my main question.
The 3rd lot would be to allow Mr. Fowler to build his home on the 3rd lot. And I can appreciate the question that it hasn't necessarily been anything that's changed. That was not since the last time it was subdivided. That's not part of our application. But the benefit to the applicant, I think, is pretty clear, is that the applicant will be able to have 3 lots instead of 2. So he'll be able to sell 2 lots and keep 1 for himself. That's the benefit to the applicant. And there isn't really any other benefit. There couldn't be. But not part of, we don't have to establish that anything has changed. since the last time that this property was subdivided. In fact, if Mr. Fowler sold the 2 existing lots to another applicant, to another owner, that new owner could come and make the same application we made here today. So it wouldn't make a difference. Sequence of subdivision doesn't actually matter for the purposes of the area variance. And I can understand why members of the public are concerned and have asked questions about that. But I don't think that's a proper consideration in evaluating whether we've met the legal standards.
Questions from the board? Then we'll come out first.
Sorry, keep going, okay. So if we do approve the 3rd lot, there's not gonna be any more variances needed for the lots. That's my question to the engineer. So I don't wanna have, if this is approved, are we just going to be approving more variance? Given the topography and steep slopes.
That's a good question.
We know that a 3rd lot, and building be done on the 3rd lot, how close it is.
As I tell everybody, you can build anything as long as you have enough money. That's anything. How they situate their houses on the lot, as long as it meets the setbacks and is allowable, then they can get a building permit and do it. They could put a deep foundation in the back. I mean, it really comes down to engineering and geotechnical engineering. There's a lot of technical evaluation that we go into where you can put that. We haven't done the full gamut of technical evaluation, but again, we're not actually proposing houses, we're proposing. And as far as what meets code and what doesn't, I would refer to the code officer.
You're not clear then if you need additional variance.
Oh, no, I think we know that we don't, that these lots otherwise comply with the code, and certainly the town attorney or the code enforcement officer is able to verify that. And one of the things that we haven't discussed, an option that this board has is you can impose any reasonable conditions on this approval that you want. And so one of the reasonable conditions could be that the applicant shall not seek or apply for any further variances, right? So that everything else has to be to code. And we would absolutely agree with that. We wouldn't object to that in any way, because we know that we can build code compliant houses on these lots. And I would just add that we're not actually seeking the approval of any homes, right? In order to build a house, we will need to get other approvals from the town. It will be reviewed by the town and we will go through the appropriate process. All we're seeking now is to subdivide these lots so that they can simply be sold to other owners. It's not about a house on property. It's really about whether we can create separate lots.
So we're gonna note that, our question too, is that 3rd lot in the back.
Yeah.
If you go to, the setbacks and stuff, would you be limiting an accessory structure that would be built? In town code.
Is the question whether we would be able to build an accessory structure on that?
Right, if they need to keep back certain setbacks from the front of the house and all that, and I don't know, setback on the headboard, the house would have to be off the property line. And back up to where the grade drops off drastically, that they wouldn't be able to put accessory shed or something like that.
We have like variances for except like barns and whatnot, if you want on the side lot or the front lot. And putting into the code, you have to have it in the house. So if the house is built right on the edge of the cliff, then really you're limiting what the other two can do, or the property owner can do without a variance. You need a variance to put a barn or a shed in the side lot.
I think you're right that you would need a variance to build anything further, so nothing else other than this home could be built as of right. And again, I'd say that if that is a concern, the board could adopt a reasonable condition of the approval saying no accessory structure shall be built behind the house. That would be a reasonable condition that's well within your jurisdiction.
Into the 3rd part, the person that might consider the building.
And that would, yes, and that would actually be binding or applicable to any future owner, because the variance that you approve will run with the land, so it would be good forever. Nobody would be able to violate that condition.
I would like to add that that property does go much further back. So even though it may not be convenient to add an accessory structure at the top of it, it wouldn't be possible the way the house is located right now. It could potentially, it's feasible, to put an accessory structure at the bottom of the slope. That could be a shed or something down there. It is possible that they could have a walking path and an accessory structure.
Have you ever seen that when we get like 3 weeks of rain?
That's, sir. You gotta let him talk, sorry.
I'm just.
I understand.
Okay.
I just had a couple,
Everybody, I just want to advise you that we've lost power at the town hall, so our internet connection is down.
place their houses in such a manner, size of house.
No. It's only the,
What I will try to do is put my tablet out so you can hear what you can, but we will have full minutes of the rest of the meeting.
One way to look at it is we could propose to change the existing 2 lots and to say, we want to just have 2 lots, but we want one of them, for instance, to be a flag lot. And then you could have just the second one be a code. So we could come to you and say, can we just create one single flag lot that would take up half of the property, and it wouldn't be about density, it wouldn't be about where the houses are, it would just be about configuration of the lot itself, whether we can say this one-dimensional regulation and the way that the town interprets that dimensional regulation lot, right? Whether we have to strictly comply with that or whether the benefit to us it outweighs any detriment from getting it. Because remember, all 3 of these lots actually exceed the minimum lot.
Recording in progress.
Apologies.
It's only that they're measuring at the street that they don't. The lot B doesn't apply. So it's not about density. We certainly are allowed to build at this density. And whether we should be entitled to it.
No, I understand that, but we are here for a variance, so we're trying to figure out how your request for a variance is gonna impact. And whether or not, I mean, we have to decide whether or not it. You know, in 2 forms, if it doesn't, then we're making an exception, and we have to then consider other factors.
Absolutely.
So that's what we're trying to come to here.
I can appreciate that. One other thing to mention is that if we're looking at the appearance of the houses, these 2 on parcels A and C, I would argue look essentially the same as all of the other, or will look essentially the same as all the other lots, the existing lots in the neighborhood. The only thing that will look different is parcel B, but this house is going to be set back from the street in such a way that it actually won't be visible from the street. And so this configuration probably won't change how the neighborhood looks at all. In fact, when you talk about reasonable conditions, if you wanted to impose a condition about screening in front of this house so that you couldn't see the house from the street, you would be within your jurisdiction to do that, and we probably wouldn't object to it anyway. And I spoke to my client, he would absolutely agree to limit that, to say that there would be no accessory structures built behind the house, even ones that are code compliant. So that's a condition that you could impose on us. We wouldn't object to that at all. So, you know, we're willing to work with the town and want to work with the town and find a configuration or any conditions that could be imposed that would make this palatable. Obviously, we want to work with the neighbors as well. We want, Mr. Fowler intends to live here and be neighbors with all these people. So our intention is not to hurt anybody.
I just want to add, everybody in this room has deed restrictions. Everyone. I put the deed restrictions on it to keep the neighborhood clean. These lots will have the same deed restrictions plus 2 or 3 more. So we will meet the same deed restrictions they have.
I guess my last comment would be to what you just stated is the way you're positioning the houses to make this work does change the appearance of that street. Because the houses on that street are set back and center, these will not be.
That's right.
That may be the case, but one thing I would just add is that we will be complying with the code requirements for setback. And so while the houses on these lots may exceed the setback requirements, they don't have to. And I would actually argue that that's probably not a consideration in approving or denying this variance, because we haven't asked for a variance from the setback requirement. And so again, it's really just about, this right here. And whether
That what creates moving the houses off center?
Can you say that again?
Isn't that what is creating the moving the houses as far as the side of the lots all the way up to the 15 feet? Isn't that why you're moving them?
Chris, can we move the houses more towards the center of parcel that we see so compliant?
Yes. So if they were to go get a building permit, those houses would have to comply with the setbacks. So those houses could be anywhere on the lot as long as they comply with the setbacks. Again, we have just shown these houses as a visualization. They're not actually being built in this location, this size. This is just to give you an idea that houses this size and the same size as the other houses in the neighborhood could be built on these lots.
So what the board could do, if you want to create more uniformity, is you put in a condition that says, okay, that we're going to increase for instance, the setback requirement from parcel A to its neighbor to the north, and the setback on parcel C from its neighbor to the south here. So you could impose that as a condition to make sure that what's built here is going to look substantially the same as all the other houses. That'd be a condition that you could impose, and I don't think we would object to it.
Well, I've got. Can I make one more statement about this?
One more second. I have one last question. And once the board is done, we can go back to it. So the 2 houses that are up at the street, those can be constructed and located on the lot similar to the rest of the neighborhood.
Absolutely, yes.
Came off the street, everything is still compiled with the back lot.
Yes,
property lines.
yes, they can.
A general question, I'm kind of talking in circles around it all night. The purpose of the variance, and what makes this property unique that you need this variance? We talked about, you know, you can build all these extra lots on here, but you can't access them to the road frontage, but why is this such a unique situation that this variance is needed?
Well, to be fair, that's actually not the question in adopting an area variance. Unlike with a use variance, we don't need to prove that the code creates some sort of financial hardship. All we need to establish is that the benefit to the applicant outweighs harm to the neighbors. So the benefit to the applicant is simply that we get a third lot. there really is no other way to configure this property to get 3 lots. You otherwise without a variance. We would be happy, we've tried, we'd be happy to move these lines around as long as we can get 3. So the only thing we're doing here, I'll be perfectly honest about that, is getting a 3rd lot where there are currently 2. But in an area variance, because it's just a dimensional standard, we don't need to prove that there's some sort of financial hardship to Mr. Fowler created by the code. I'm sorry, I know that doesn't directly answer your question. I'd be happy to, if you have a follow-up question, I'd be happy to.
Could you make the lot wider, like the access point, or you think you could do that to 50, 90, make it even wider to go down to that lot?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Still keep it in code with the frontage for the other 2 lots.
And characteristics of the neighborhood.
We absolutely could make this we'll call this the pole on the flag lot. We could make this wider. The reason that we are proposing this configuration now is because this 30-foot width allows us to have these A and C are currently code compliant, right? We don't actually need variances for A and C. We only need a variance for B. That's why we proposed it this way. But if the board would prefer to see the pole portion, the access portion wider, we can absolutely do that. We don't even have to go back and reapply. You can make that a condition of your approval that this the access portion be 50 feet wide, 90 feet wide. We can make them all 3 the same width. That would put us at 100 feet each. But we can make them all 100 feet wide.
Can I ask a question on staff? Why is it going to county planning again? Can you just explain that?
The property's within 500 feet of the town of Victor.
Okay.
And the town of Victor has been notified of this variance as well.
It's one for you guys, the property or whoever, that property that is wet. Is it designated anything or is it just, is it all the same? Has it been designated any kind of wet?
Wetland, flood zone.
Flood zone, wetland that can later be developed or not?
There is a flood zone that goes along Mud Creek and Argo Creek, however you want to call it, which is subject to permits from the town. I doubt that you would be able to put a structure down at the bottom of that hill because you'd be in the floodplain. But if you want to elevate enough and allow for floodproofing, as the engineer said, you want to spend the money, we can design it.
Yeah, we could build anything with the enough engineering, although unless this board made it a condition that the rear portion of the property never be developed. Again, I think that's.
Mr. Chairman,
So we'll take some questions now. Sorry.
I just have one thing I want to clarify in her question. I have a feeling this is going to come from you guys. If you'd like to ask the applicant. So she asked a question about what makes this unique. I guess the question would be what makes this not spot zoning, which you guys are not allowed to do. What is the difference between this property versus the property across the street? If the neighbor across the street wanted to do the same thing and create a flag lot, as long as he met 20 foot and the minimum sizes. I think that's kind of where she was going with that. And I feel this is gonna be a question you guys are gonna ask me next week that you might want to ask the applicant or his representation while they're here. If you choose.
Lawyer, I'd love the opportunity to answer that question. Spot zoning in the legislative act is essentially rezoning one parcel of property just for one purpose. It's generally considered to be illegal. You're not supposed to just rezone one person's property. The legislature is not supposed to take an action just to benefit one person. So you couldn't say, let's make this parcel industrial. This isn't spot zoning. In fact, the zoning code provides for area variance. I wouldn't even say that what we're doing here is trying to circumvent or get an exception from the code. The variance procedure is part of the zoning code. This complies with the zoning code if this board approves the variance. If you find that the benefit to the owner outweighs any harm to the community, you approve this variance, then we comply with the code. So this is not spot zoning, that's a different concept. And also that would generally apply to uses, and this is in keeping with the uses that are permitted. Yeah, sorry, I like zoning.
But then I'll open it back up to.
Yeah, I just wanted to point one thing out for you. I don't know if you've ever been in our neighborhood and seen it. When I sit on my front porch and I look left or right, I don't see a house in front. This lot right here is owned by the phones. They're building a house on it right now. That house is 100 feet where the garage starts from the road. So if these houses are consistent, they gotta be way further back than what they're tentatively putting in there now. So he's gonna look at his front yard, he's gonna see a house. Right there, 15 feet off the property line. I don't know if they're listening online or not, but that would lower my property value. It would certainly lower what I thought about the neighborhood I live in. So his argument that it doesn't affect us. How many thousands of dollars does each of us feel we lose by having something have that in our, and I live across the street, how are you gonna prevent me from seeing that house back there? I don't think you better do it all. You gotta put a fence. That'd be even worse.
We'd be happy to put in screening.
What is screening? Explain that. You do like screening.
Do vegetative screening. We could do trees, we could do shrubs, we could do anything that this board feels is appropriate in order to prevent any harm to the neighbor. And you can do that without our consent, but we would consent to it, and we want to build a project that's good for the neighborhood. And I'll just touch on the issue of property values. That may be a valid consideration of what effect this could have on property value, but I would actually say there's really no proof in front of this board that this specific area variance, whether or not we can have a lot that doesn't fully comply just with the minimum lot width, whether that would somehow lower the values of the neighboring property. You know, I don't think that's a fact that's on the record that this board should consider in making a determination. Not that it's not a valid point, and I don't begrudge you for making that point, but I don't think that's something that should be considered deciding this application.
Is there any other comments you got addressed to the board?
Real quick, I just have a question. I don't know if it's germane or not. I don't want to have an impact. But is the storm drain depicted anywhere on here? Okay, so the storm drain runs on this side of the street, but there's also a pipe that runs, the pipe that drains the storm drain runs somewhere in here. Back out and just emptied out back here. It just comes out of the back of the hill and empties out. That might be considered a seasonal waterfall by some, not by me, but my question is that going to dictate where they can put these houses? So they're going to be right back here asking for another variance because they can't build on top of the storm drain. Can't put a basement in without rerouting the storm drain, which is more cost to you, which ultimately is more cost to us. So that's something that should be considered, I believe, or we want to go for this change. I think originally, and I'm just guessing, the storm drain was put in based off of the house property being centered. I believe it's offset somewhere up in here, right where this lot's going to be. So it might be something somebody has to look at.
That would definitely be a planning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Would you like me to address that?
So like the engineer said, if that amount of money, you can do anything with the right amount of money.
I believe the drainage that he's talking about is this line right here. This sad away from.
No.
It's not the right line.
There's a
Yeah, that
front tour, it's our property.
So what I'd like to say is that we're not proposing houses, we're proposing a lot split. We're not proposing site plan approval. This is a variance. So we're not asking what, can this be done? Except for, can this be done with regards to the lot split? Engineering wise, houses, drainage, infrastructure, that can all be handled with an application that comes in for a building permit or building on these things. We're not actually asking to build anything.
Nothing to do with planning board or anything to do with planning a lot, so.
I just don't understand why there can't be one home built on the two lots. If tonight, if this is all about, is it more of a benefit for you if you could sell the other two lots? How much money could that bring in? I don't know.
So you gotta address the board.
Yeah, you gotta talk about this, and we're only dealing with turning 2 into 3, as far as benefits, no, that's not.
So turning 2 into 3. Do we have a map here tonight that shows the other existing buildings in Pheasants Crossing? Because I think you would see, if you imagine these 3 lots, it doesn't fit in with all the other buildings in Pheasants Crossing. Do you have here tonight a satellite view of all the homes and how these 3 lots and these proposed structures, even though we're not talking about proposed structures, would look in Pheasants Crossing? Do we have that here?
That goes in impact.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying, make sure you do, so.
We have a map of all the current lot configurations.
Okay,
Yeah.
but the homes on the lots and how this is proposed. Even though we're talking about structures.
I understand.
Okay, so you understand.
Yeah, you understand. Okay.
I think essentially everybody.
So. I think that the public forum for this end.
We're gonna keep this open, right?
Gentlemen,
We're gonna check out. That's why we shouldn't involve.
Yeah.
okay. I'd like to move on. Yes. Waive the reading and proceed and approve that it's submitted.
They read it here.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah, I'd like to have a motion to review the continuation. And Proven as continuation for the April 24th meeting. I have a motion for that.
I'll move it.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you.
The board's that. That one. It's was not in the May meeting.
I'm sorry,
The board had that.
that's it.
You have one that you're asking us to move the thing.
Oh, that's because of grievance day, which comes on that Tuesday. And it would be normally a town board meeting.
Yeah.
So they're asking, the town board is asking if you can move your meeting up. We don't know whether you're gonna have a meeting in May or not to begin with.
Right.
This is for the May meeting.
Yeah,
So we made.
So third, right?
that's the fourth Monday, the 23rd.
So you'd have to move it up a week. Because you can't move it back a week because that's Memorial Day, so you'd have to move it up to the 15th.
And all you'd have to do is just give notice to the paper and post it that if there is a meeting, it'll be held on that day in lieu of.
Yeah.
That works for me, sorry.
Yeah.
It's something I have to ask for.
No, you got just verbal agreement. You can
Yep.
let Marcy know that that's okay
Yeah.
I'll take
May
it.
15th, Monday, thank you.
if needed.
If you want.
Okay.
Thanks, John.
comments in the spirit of something. Those are what we talked about.
Where's Meyer? Gotta go through everybody's application. Oh my God.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so Director of Development update.
Yeah, just a couple of things for you. I'm very happy to announce that our planning board chairman, Ed Heminger, has been awarded or will be awarded next month the planning board chairman of New York State. And it's quite an honor. It reflects 25 years of volunteer work here with the community and various boards, including this board, Board of Assessment Review and Planning Board. And during that period of time, he's only had, I believe it's 3 Article 78s, all of which were found in favor of the town. So he's got a pretty good shooting record, like that guy from San Diego State last night, or Miami. Perfect from the field, perfect from the foul line. Other than that, tomorrow night's town board meeting. It is a matter where they're going to be acting on seeker for the new development over on 96, known as the Powers Incentive Zoning Project. It's a 216 lot subdivision with 50,000 square feet of commercial along 96. And we're still waiting to hear back from the people over here on 96 between Tops and the plaza at the corner. They're still disagreeing on matters of life, I guess. As soon as they figure out what they can agree to, then we'll move on. Other than that, boy, it's good to see you people here tonight without masks on, you know, sitting next to
How
each
about
other.
it? Like real people.
Yeah, I remember those days, you know? It's really great. Thank you.
So since there's people here, we have an open clerk of the board position. Sarah's just temporary. Anybody who wants to, their meetings aren't normally this exciting. But yeah, so we do still have an open clerk of the board position that's out there. If anybody knows anybody interested, spread the word.
She pays him to say that.
Yeah.
Work that.
Just takes lunch once a week. And other than that, we will obviously have the meeting next month, April 24th, 7 p.m. in here and on Zoom.
You know, if we still are on auxiliary power.
I do not, Pete left, so I know internet's and everything's back up, so I just got a blur.
Oh, Pete was here.
Pete stopped it, yeah.
Check.
I did